type the exclamation mark and hit tab, and this is actually an HTML boilerplate, and it contains a body section here, and the body section is where we're going to write the code that renders to the page. Don't worry about what all this extra stuff is at the moment if it is unfamiliar to you, as we'll be looking at that very shortly. First, I want to concentrate on making a web page that is displayed in the browser. So just for now, all you need to know is you can type an exclamation mark, hit tab, and you will get this structure. So if I open our file with Live Server by right-clicking it and selecting that, any changes that I make automatically update in the browser. So if you want to stop the server, you can just go down here to the bottom of the text editor and click where it says port 5500. To start it again, you just re-click your file and select to open it with Live Server. So at the moment, our page is totally blank, but inside of the body element, which is these two opening and closing body tags, in here I'm going to add an H1 element, which is an element that we saw in the last video. If we remember that the H1 is going to give us the large heading, the largest heading type actually available to us in HTML. So remember, we need an opening H1 and a closing H1 tag, but again, using Emmet, we can just simply type H1 and hit tab, and Emmet will autocomplete and create the element for us. In between the H1 tags, I'm going to add some text content. I'll type hello world and save. We have some HTML content that is displayed now in the browser. Now, I'm sure this isn't going to win any Webby Awards for Website of the Year, but if you are following along, then congratulations, you have built your very first web page that the browser recognizes and is displaying. It might not be much right now, but this is the foundation that everything else that comes after is built upon. What if I make a change to the text in my element? If I decide to add, say, an exclamation mark to the end of where it says hello world. I'll do that in our file and save, and we see that Live Server gets to work and we have an exclamation mark. So let's have a look at this HTML structure that we glossed over just a minute ago. The first thing to know is that we can see lots of the tags that we've been discussing, opening and closing tags that are following the general rule of HTML that we did discuss in the last video. For example, we see this HTML element at the top of the section of HTML code and a closing HTML at the very bottom. This is an HTML element, and everything between these tags is the HTML of our file. We'll see it has a lang or language attribute, and this is set to EN or English. And this attribute just lets the browser know what language the content of the web page is going to be in. The first element that we see inside our HTML tags is our head element. Again, we see it has an opening and closing tag, and anything that goes inside of the head of our document is not going to be displayed on the page. We can add stuff like the title of the page, which is in fact what will be displayed in the browser tab. The head can also include other special information, which we will come to later on in a little more detail. But this is typically information for the browser, like where to find external resources that our page is using. Something like a font that the text of the page will be displayed in, or the location of icons that the page is using, or an external file that controls the styles of our page. After the head comes the body, which contains any content that is to be rendered by the browser and displayed on the page. The information we want visible in the main page could be headings, paragraphs, lists, images, links, and so on. It all goes here inside the body, and again we notice that our body element, as we said before, has an opening and closing tag. Back in the head section, we see we have a char set or character set, which is UTF-8. And this is just concerned with character encoding. If you want to know more about that, if you're into that kind of stuff, then please do look it up. But essentially, it just tells the browser to encode any characters in the UTF-8 format. We have also a meta viewport tag here, which essentially defines the visible area of a web page and is required to make our web pages responsive and suitable for all devices. We'll cover responsiveness in great detail later on when we get to the CSS videos. Here it is set to the width of the device which it is being viewed upon. The third meta tag makes our web page compatible to be displayed in older browsers like Internet Explorer. And you might notice that these meta tags are all self-closing. They don't have opening and closing tags, as they are not wrapping any content or any other elements. So lastly, at the top of the page, we see that we have a doc type. And the doc type declaration is not actually an HTML tag, it is really an instruction to the web browser about what markup language the page is written in. The doc type tag tells the browser that the document type here is going to be HTML, and you include this at the very top. So now we've looked at all of that, we can begin adding some more content inside of our body section.